Sean Nielsen's there. Oops, I'm not.
They're not, excuse me, they're not waiting for an answer from us, but we still need to figure it out.
We'll figure it out. What's your title? Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 6:33 p.m. I'll call this meeting of Brighton Council to order and note that our clerk has had to step away for a personal emergency. That leaves us without a clerk, and under the Municipal Act, we're not permitted to meet. However, if I have a motion from council designating Robin van de Moosdijk, Legislative Coordinator, as a Deputy Clerk for the Municipality of Brighton, we can proceed. Is there a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And we're in good hands with Robin, I can assure everybody. As we begin this meeting, I'll ask that all present silence their cell phones and other electronic devices, and I will do the same. I remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. Brighton Council's work takes place on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, now of Alderville. We are thankful to be able to work and live on this land. We offer a land acknowledgement as a way to recognize, respect, and honor this territory, the treaties, the original occupants, their ancestors, and the historic connection they still have with these lands and waters. We are grateful for the opportunity that these lands and waters present to the people of Brighton, and grateful to the work in partnership with the Indigenous community on their stewardship and sustainability. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the May 6, 2024 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Fredis.
To the chair, thank you. This year, Accessibility Week, week ending May 31st, I believe it is. The Accessibility Committee is putting on an experience day, and we're requesting that all of council and senior staff show up to participate in the event. We will provide you with casts and slings and blindfolds and whatever other to replicate some of the accessibility challenges. And I think we're starting at Councillor Wheeldon, 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, something like that, 10 to 1. The challenge is to be equipped with something so that you can experience the situation and to perform a task or a chore within the municipality to help raise awareness. And we're counting on all of council and senior staff to participate.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fredis, and I apologize. I was mildly distracted by the giant charcuterie board walking past the entrance to the Thank you for that. And it's in my calendar, so thank you. Any other announcements this evening? Had the opportunity to go up to the Codrington Farmers Market on Sunday. It is their 10th anniversary this year. And even though it was not the best of weather, it was still well attended by residents. There were only 3 open parking spots when Tammy and I arrived. And although they had, I think Leanna said they had 8 or 10 cancellations from vendors, the market itself was still packed with vendors. So good going for them, and we look forward to celebrating their 10th with them on an ongoing basis throughout the year. Also, for those who weren't able to attend, we had a volunteer recognition event just before this council meeting. It was well attended by community volunteers, and at which we had 5 nominees for Citizen of the Year, and really incredible nominees for this community, incredible community leaders in the volunteer sector. And Mr. Craig Kerr, former councillor Craig Kerr, was named Citizen of the Year for 2024 for his work with the creation of the Brighton Health Services Center, his work with the Masonic Lodge and the creation of their grant post-sale of the lodge, and his current work with Bridge Hospice and the Bridge Hospice Foundation. So congratulations to Mr. Kerr, and we look forward to seeing him out and about in the community as he wears his Citizen of the Year wardrobe or whatever, I don't know. That's it for announcements, unless there's anyone else. Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
Just a quick little announcement for those of us who knew longtime Councillor Rose Ellery. I don't believe that we made that announcement here at council. I think it was after our last council meeting, who passed away, I believe, April 22nd. Yeah, just that we keep her family in our thoughts at this time.
Indeed, and Rose was a 23-year-long plus member of the former town and then the first amalgamated council of the municipality as well. So we did lower the flags to half-staff during her memorial service, and we will keep our thoughts with the family. Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Wilden.
Just a quick note that Councillor Rowley and I attended the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities Conference last week. Had great time learning a lot about current challenges in the municipal sector, as well as connecting with Deputy Mayor Nicole Beattie from Cobourg and Councillor Mary Catherine O'Neill from Alnwick-Haldimand, and other council members and mayors from Hastings County as well. So good to connect with colleagues. I think we learned a lot.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? So move on to the adoption of the minutes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that the April 15th, 2024 council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council adopt the April 29th, 2024 special council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And being none opposed, that motion is carried. We have no statutory public meeting this evening. We have no delegations or presentations. That brings us to citizens' comment. Madam Deputy Clerk, are you aware of any citizens' comments this evening? Thank you. Are there any in the bin? I just want to make sure. No, we're getting the indication from one of our normal attendees who knows the system. That brings us to staff reports. Our first report is outdoor sports field and court allocation policy. Manager Hallam, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to just point out that the historical usage will continue to be used as a baseline for allocating in the future. The intent of this policy is to provide clarity in the process and the formality that mirrors the policy of our other municipal amenities.
Thank you, Manager. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council receive the staff report, outdoor sport field and court allocation policy, and further that Council approve the outdoor sport field and court allocation policy for a clear process to establish fair allotment and use of the municipality of Brighton's outdoor recreational amenities. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just regarding the list of priorities, having read that a few times, I'm guessing that they're not really in any particular order. It's just the way you had kind of listed them, Ms. Vallon.
Through you, the mayor, to councillor, they are in the chronicle order of that we allocate the ice time, or sorry, field time. So the municipality would have the first right, and then so forth through that list of 7.
We have another question.
You may.
So I guess that's maybe where my question was. I'm just wondering why tournaments would be ahead of general minor sports users and youth programming.
Through the mayor to the councillor. As you know, tournament events bring parents, grandparents, family, friends, out-of-town guests, which entails an economic spin-off to the community. While you're waiting for your game times in between, you're going to go shopping or to the downtown or to the restaurants. But just to clarify that these tournaments are not outside of our regular tournament. So it could be the contractual user groups are booking those tournaments. So if the ball association had a tournament, that would be allocated first. And it's primarily for the booking process that we allocate those in first before we do all the rest of the.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Wright?
You, Mr. Mayor. My question is on the process. It says on an annual basis that you will organize a meeting with the user groups. Were the user groups asked, and did they provide any information or input into this policy thus far?
Manager?
The user groups were not consulted with the policy. The policy was mirroring the existing ice allocation policy, which they regularly have a user group meeting at the start of the season. And so this just mirrors the same process through our sport fields.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to our next staff report, ice allocation policy. Manager Hallam, do you have anything to add or highlight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My apologies for not attaching the former policy from 2009 in your report for comparison. The concept of the ice allocation did not change. The breakdown and the labeling of the priorities were just edited for clear identity. So if you would like, I can highlight the differences from the existing policy.
So the option, council, is to proceed with reading the motion, ask the manager to highlight, or we could refer the whole thing back to the manager to bring a report at another date with the old report. So do you want to get her to highlight the changes? Does that work for everyone? Manager Hallam, would you do so, please?
So the old policy or the existing policy identifies 4 priority list, and where the new one identifies 7 different bullet points. And the first one that the existing policy identifies is called the ice provider programs, which is the same in clarity. It's the same as municipal programs. I just renamed the wording. So it's your public skates, community usage, as identified in the policy. The next priority that the existing policy identifies is youth programs. The third program or priority is adult programs. And the fourth priority is private and casual rentals. So the difference would be the Board of Education. So I added in identifying the school groups. And then the number 6 non-residence groups, which wasn't identified separately before. Going back to the tournaments as the second priority, in the existing policy, it identified the tournaments after the priority. And if you don't mind, I'll just read what it says under the title Tournaments and Carnivals. The municipality of Brighton supports special programs like tournaments and carnivals. Priority will be given to these events and they will be scheduled in the ice allocation process first, after the ice provider programs have been scheduled. So in fact, they are second in order. It was just presented in a different format previously. Lastly, the only other difference between this lengthier document that exists is I did not include the terms and conditions of booking the facility in the newer policy. It is part of our contracts, the terms and conditions, but I felt that it wasn't necessary part of allocating the ice when your flood times were, when your dressing room hours were. So that's the other major difference between the two documents.
Thank you for that. Motion is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council receive the staff report ice allocation policy, and further the council approve the updated ice allocation policy. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the same question. Were the groups consulted on this, and has anything changed so much that it's going to make any changes in how they're currently being done?
Manager.
Through the mayor to the council. There's no preconceived knowledge of any changes. The historical value that user groups have had in the past will still be weighted.
Okay.
At the beginning, when I started, I asked for all of the user groups for both field and ice to provide me with their request form that indicates their history and a little bit of background for me coming in. So that is not the intent of doing anything. It's just putting a framework in place.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next is wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the staff report dated May 6, 2024 regarding the procurement of strategic communication advisory services for the purpose of expediting the municipality's grant application to the Housing Enabled Water System Fund for wastewater treatment funding, and that council approve an agreement with Atlas Strategic Advisors for the purposes of representing the municipality before the provincial government for aforementioned application funding. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
To Mr. Whiteman, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Whiteman, I did send you an email earlier today. I'm not sure if you saw it in time, but I had some concerns and questions about this one. This Atlas Strategic Advisors, and looking at their engagement plan, for them being communication experts, I had some serious concerns just over how they formatted their engagement plan. There are sentences that are pushed together, words that are pushed together, and it just doesn't strike me as someone who is excellent in communication. Your report also states that the application for funding to the Ontario Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund was done on the closing date of April 19th. So we've submitted the application. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Okay, so we've submitted the application, but part of Atlas's engagement plan is to refine and submit the municipality's application. So exactly what are we hiring them for if we've already submitted the application? Will they be refining it and resubmitting it? Is that even allowed?
Director Whiteman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wright. They did assist us, why we're getting feedback. They did assist us in putting together sort of a history compilation of our wastewater treatment facility and the history that we've had associated with it. The application itself was provide a lot of input. Most of the input was provided by the design engineers, JL Richards. But we had to also package together supporting documentation, close to 325 pages of supporting documentation, of which one was the provision of a sort of a cover letter or history of where we are, and also as related to our pre-approved developments or housing developments that we have and its impact on our capacity at this point in time. In relation to communications and how they have worded things, we could most likely modify that proposal that has been attached to the report. And I don't think it will have any impact on the retainer amount. Maybe I shouldn't speak like that, but I don't believe so. But generally, the terms, the conditions, some of that which was communicated through that proposal, I think we could modify.
And Director, the other part of that question was what would their role be moving forward?
Sorry, I didn't quite pick that up, Mr. Mayor.
The second part of the question was what will their role be moving forward post application?
I believe that they could provide us with some sort of input from other sources, other MPPs, MPs, etc., that they might be in communications with as to where applications are or how we could better present ourselves moving forward. And so I think that's the kind of role that we are anticipating that they could provide and strategize in terms of any meetings that further meetings come up with the Ministry of Infrastructure in particular, and put us in touch with others that could be acquainted with our application, our submission, and how we could better present ourselves if such meetings take place.
Is it fair to say that these are strategic communication folks with relationships with people in the current government, and that they've had some significant success with other municipalities?
I think that's a fair statement.
I thought it might be. Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. In reading their engagement plan, I concur with Director Whiteman. If you boil it all down, what they're talking about is advocacy, government relations, basically working closely with the government stakeholders to arrange and facilitate meetings. Put plain and simple, it's a lobbyist to work the back room. That's what we're getting. We're not acquiring them for their technical expertise. We have JL Richards for that. And I think we need that sort of eyes, ears, and feet on the ground in Queen's Park to make sure that we don't get dropped from the list. So I applaud this effort. I support this effort. I only have one question, if I may, as a follow-up, Your Worship.
Please do.
It says here that the MECP has issued a draft CLI ECA containing a special condition requiring any new developments be stopped until the wastewater treatment system is upgraded. My reading of this is that could be 2.5 years out. Is it just a draft? And can we be counting on these folks to address this so that they don't impede developments for that 2.5 year period? I hope that's part of their scope and their mandate, Director Whiteman.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Feratis. Presently, we are engaged with the Ministry of Environment. We are have monthly meetings with them through JL Richards, our design consultants, and the MOE, their compliance and technical staff, as well as ourselves. And there are many questions that are posed. We're held to our compliance and inspection report have aligned our design that we are presently engaged with JL Richards to meet those strict design proposal dates or deadlines that are required, whether it's being whether it's at 15%, 30%, 60%, and completion of the design. So it's very strict. The MOE is holding us to that, holding our feet to the fire, I guess you can say. And so I think that part is taken care of. There's sort of, I guess, maybe one could assume a two-pronged approach. In many respects, our CLIECAs are sort of in draft format based upon where we end up with our design. And given that the MOE is really holding us to it and we must meet it, and then things will sort of change or modify themselves and moving forward and getting a completed final draft of a CLIECA. That's my understanding of where we lie at this present time.
Director Whiteman, is it fair to say that as long as the municipality carries on toward a path that is agreeable with the MECP as we have been, that it is unlikely that they will suspend development in the community?
I'm going to repeat myself. It's a fair statement. A true statement.
You're muffled, Director.
It's a true statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wheeldon.
I just wanted to note to my colleagues that I've looked up this group, and of the 5 people listed on their site, 2 of them worked previously in the Premier's office and 2 others worked in other ministers' offices. So they are very connected with this government, as much as it sometimes burns me that this government sometimes talks to their friends more than to other folks. Might as well work for us from time to time.
Yeah, here on so many levels. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you. I got a new one. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, and echoing what Councillor Wheeldon has said, I too had a look up and a read up on what they're currently calling Atlas Strategic Advisors. My question, Mr. Whiteman, is how did we come to select this particular group of advisors?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Butwell. We, both Paul and myself, gave some careful thought to sort of trying to distinguish ourselves in the many applications that would be coming forth before the MECP. And with that in mind, we were under the impression that there are many municipalities, and inclusive of that are many rural municipalities that are engaged in a very similar process. So we wanted to, I guess, put our best foot forward in that regard, and hopefully not be ignored. With that said, I would say that we interviewed 3 separate companies, this particular company seemed to be a bit of a concise group, but within a number of people that seemed to have what we thought could be able to present the municipality in this best light. So we felt that they were best suited, and that's what we engaged with. We had limited time, as well as also completing all the application itself and putting everything together. So this was what we decided in the best interest of the municipality.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned in your response, Director Whiteman, that there were many applications that would be coming forward. Is it our thought that we will be using them on an ongoing basis beyond this limited 6-month term for different applications or further application?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Butwell, yes. There are other applications at the Good Roads Conference. There was mentioned by the Minister of Infrastructure, Kingma Surma. She had pointed out that there was something that should be forthcoming fall or late fall. I can't remember what she said, but I know it's the fall. She mentioned it, and I think that would also be a benefit to us in moving forward. It could very well be extended beyond for a 6-month term above and beyond the 3-month, I guess, limited term that I think is also in the proposal.
Follow up?
Thank you again for the follow-up. I did read that there was at the 3-month mark, a review point where we could discuss extending. Would it be possible for staff to bring back their thoughts to council prior to that 3-month mark to let us know where they might be headed?
Director?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Fredis?
Through the chair, as I said earlier, I agree we need this support and help. I was delighted to hear that Councillor Wheeldon pointed out that there were a couple of senior government bureaucrats that were part of this group. My experience has been that that's always beneficial. I guess my only disappointment is it would have been nice if one of them had been the former chief of staff to the premier. That would have really gotten us to the top of the list, but I guess you get what you get.
No, I have no comment. Any other questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next report is the annual report of stormwater management. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
Have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council received the staff report regarding the annual report of stormwater management for the municipality of Brighton as information. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is the report and capital project status. This has been put together by the CAO, who is not here. So I think this is is it the intent that this will appear on every council meeting? Do you know? The deputy clerk is saying she understands that we will see this at every council meeting. So I will open the floor to questions. I'll read the motion. I'll open the floor to questions at that point. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that the report and capital project status be received for information. Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. I was, if the CEO were here, I was going to ask if we might be able to add a couple of items to the report for follow-up purposes. And then I had a couple of questions about a couple of items that are within the report, if I may.
So it's my understanding you have emailed the CAO about those items you would like to see in this report?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I'll let you two duke that one out. I don't think there'll be much duking, but I'll let you two duke that one out, and we'll see what comes forward at the next one. Are the questions you have for specific departments that are here that could maybe answer them?
Yes.
Okay, I'll allow the questions then. Go ahead.
Okay. The first concerns the fire department and a drone to be purchased in the second quarter. Now, because of NAV Canada and Transport Canada regulations, specific regulation in place for drone operations, particularly in controlled airspace, which we are due to Trenton. I just wanted to ask the chief, have our operators received their RPAS certification so that they can fly the drone?
Chief Thompson.
Through your worship to Councillor Fredis, yes, we have received the certification for small remotely piloted aircraft systems. So RPAS is what it is. Currently, our deputy fire chief is going to be the lead of this program. Once the deputy gets all certified and trained and we get all our operating guidelines and so on in place, then we'll expand that to other officers within. We also received a certification from National Fire Protection Association as well. So we have 2 certifications to fly the current drone that we have.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Fredis.
And my other question, capital projects, it talks about a half-ton truck for the mechanic, indicates electric drive. But my recollection from an earlier report from Public Works is that we actually purchased a gas-powered vehicle. And I just wanted to do a memory check. Did I catch that right? Was it a gas-powered vehicle that we purchased?
Director Whiteman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Faradas. Yes, we have. It's a gas vehicle. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And since the CIO is not here, I don't really have anyone to ask the question of, but I did speak with CIO Arthurs earlier today about the economic development line item for the branding refresh and cost analysis, which is a new item that is appearing that seems to not line up with our motion that we made about the rebranding, which was that any additional work going forward may, oh, there she is. That any additional work going forward would be at the direction of council.
CAO Arthurs.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I just caught the tail end of that with regard to the rebranding. Could you just repeat that, Councillor Butler?
Yes, so I was questioning the addition of this project item onto the workflow or the worksheet. The motion that we passed, I did go back and rewatch our meeting and re-listen to it, and it does appear that we gave direction that any work on any rebranding would stop until requested by council. So I'm just wondering why this is on this list.
CAO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Butwell. I think there was a discussion about what the expectation was from council and whether or not they were looking for a costing on a rebranding, on a logo change, and the impact that that would have on things like vehicles, signage, and such. So I think some clarity from council at this stage. If the message is to put everything on pause until council makes a determination on how they want to move forward, we certainly can do that and remove it from the list or just indicate that we're awaiting council direction. Alternatively, I think right now the understanding is that staff is looking at costing, but if that's not council's intent, then we can make modification to that.
It was my understanding from the motion that we were to receive a report on costing of a rebranding, but perhaps I'm wrong. Councillor Faradas.
Through the chair, yes, that was my recollection, was that no more development work was to be done on that logo refresh, and certainly not expansion of that one configuration, which wasn't all that well received. We did ask for a costing before any further work was done on the project, which would include even retention of a professional designer. But there was no time frame set for that. June 17th might be a little ambitious to be doing that in, because I think my takeaway was we viewed this more as a 2025 budget consideration and not something for this year. That's my recollection.
Very well. Councillor Wheeldon.
I think that the motion that we passed was pretty straightforward in that it said nothing else should happen until we get a costing. And so talking about when this is going to appear wasn't actually in our motion. We were just saying we'd like a cut to see how much it will cost before anything else happens. So getting the costing is how we get to move forward. That's why I voted for it, because I do want it to go forward. Just I thought it was reasonable to ask for how much it would cost.
Well, that's my recollection as well. Councillor Butwell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was my motion. So I made the motion, and it was my understanding that if we wanted to proceed, then we would have to get a fulsome costing. but we were not looking to proceed at that time. We were shelving.
And nothing is proceeding. We're waiting on the costing. So I think that's what this line item is.
Yeah, I think it was about not incurring any additional hours or costing to something that council hadn't directed to happen in the first place.
Right. So I think this probably still belongs on the follow-up list because we are waiting for the costing. And whether we want to then refer that to budget process for 2025, that will be up to this council, how we dispose of the report. But I would anticipate that staff would still want to, in as timely a manner as possible, bring forward a report on the costing, what it's going to cost to rebrand and repatch and whatever the municipality. Anything further from members of council? Councilor Fredis.
Through the chair, now that the CAO has joined us, if I could perhaps, CAO,
I knew this was going to happen.
it's wonderful to see you here. I'm sure you've had an interesting day. I was wondering if we might be able to add a couple of categories to your report. First off, let me say I love your report. It's comprehensive, easy to understand, and very effective, and I think it's great. There are a couple of things I would hope that we could add. One that comes to mind is the Dr. Lambrakos agreement, the refund of the retention funds per the agreement. If we could add that to the list so that we're kept apprised of the progress on that, because it's been a number of months now. Item number 2 is water wastewater rate study. The question had been asked about reviewing how this is looked at. Historically, we've suppressed the base water rate and leaned heavily on usage fees. And the question was asked, could we reconfigure the formula so that our base water rate was more consistent with surrounding municipalities such as Trenton and Trent Hills, and thereby take some of the pressure off of usage rates. So if that could be built into the follow-up list of this thing so that we're some assurance that that question will be answered before we get to the completion of the study will be beneficial. The next item would be the development charges study. My understanding was it was to have started in February, but I'm not sure of where it stands now. And additionally, council's passed a motion, and I believe we're advocating, or certainly I'm advocating, that it should incorporate impost fees in order to generate the capital funding necessary for our water wastewater expansions. So if we could get that included in the thing and some assurance that impost would be addressed in that. And the last item is STA compliance and MAT tax. We've had a couple of reports and some of the data is a little odd. I mean, you see one set of numbers in one report and I see another set of numbers in the other report, and there's some inconsistency. And I guess I'm hoping that we could put this on the list and get a fulsome and complete report that gives us clear and accurate numbers on where we stand in terms of licensing, and in terms of MAT tax collection, and any legal issues. I think we know most of them to this point, but any that we might anticipate. And I think I've shared with you some of the data that has been around, some historical stuff. So I leave that with you to maybe build that into the status reporting going forward. And I thank you so much if you could accommodate those.
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fredis, absolutely, we can add those items. Most of what you've identified is already in the works, so we can chat about that as a management team and put some dates in there so that council has the expected delivery dates on those.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And there are no notices of motions or motions. There's no unfinished business listed here, which brings us to bylaws. The first bylaw is with regard to the purchase of Sale 21 Kingsley Avenue. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement of purchase and sale of land of 21 Kingsley Avenue, Brighton, County of Northumberland, between Mary Doreen Thompson and the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next is the tax rate bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of tax rates for 2024 and to further provide for the penalty and interest in default of payment thereof. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And an amending bylaw of 113/2023 wastewater rates. It's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 113/2023 water and wastewater rates for the municipality of Brighton effective January 1st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That brings us to reports and minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. The first is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole meeting, April 22nd, and the meeting minutes. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council directs staff to provide a report on live stream video audio of committee meetings and committee structures on or before March 2026. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council adopt the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, April 22nd, 2024, as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee meeting minutes of February 15th. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council received the February 15th, 2024 Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Councillor Butwell and or Wheeldon, do you have any comment on these minutes? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. Yeah, the meeting in question, we did discuss the thing that we just passed, asking for clarity on recording committee meetings, and we've discussed that at Committee of the Whole already, so I won't get into that. But another thing that was on this agenda was a discussion of asset-based community development, and I think I've talked to you all about it probably more than once, but it's does sort of frame the approach that this committee is taking, in that asset-based community development really tries to inspire and facilitate community-led efforts. And along those lines, the JEDI Committee has, in our discussions, we've acknowledged that we can't be the representation of all of the diversity of Brighton, and that it's probably not our role to do so. And so we're looking to play a facilitating role. So along those lines, the chair, Mo, and I met with some members of the LGBTQIA+ community at Trinity St. Andrews, and discussed how we might support their pride efforts or things like that. These were people who had approached me at the Pi Day event that they had put on. And so just getting their feedback and input was really helpful about, how might we support them? How might we create a sense of who all is doing good work in the community that we might support? And can we create sort of a web of support around that part of our community? So Mo and I sat down with several of them once, and they have continued to reach out into the community to try and make further contacts. So I know at some point we're looking at having a page on our website for committees. And at that point, I think we will actually have some content to put on there about different resources in the community to support diversity. So that was something I wanted to highlight from those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon. Anything to add, Councillor Butwell?
I was only in attendance at the very beginning of that meeting where the discussion about the video recording was on, so I don't have anything else to.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wright.
I just wanted to note that the label at the top of that report says it's under the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee rather than the JEDI Committee. So that should probably be changed.
I see that Deputy Clerk is making note. Deputy Clerk, should we therefore pass these as amended? As amended? Is that okay with you, Councillor Rowley as the mover? Councillor Wheeldon as the seconder. Any further discussion? That now reads as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council received the February 27th, 2024 Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. And Councillor Butwell and Wheeldon, anything to add? Councillor Wheeldon.
Yeah, we did receive a delegation from the Plant-Based Treaty, an organization that is trying to get municipalities and other organizations around the world to sign off on a pledge that I'm still researching because it doesn't seem like they have a very strict thing they want us to agree to. They just want us to make a statement in support of moving towards plant-based diets in our community. I think that is valuable. I'm still not entirely sure what contribution we can make or what would be appropriate for the committee. So we're going to discuss that at future dates. The other thing that, we also discussed asset-based community development at that meeting. And we discussed getting a little forest kit from Lower Trent Conservation. And we have since spoken more about that with Manager Hallam from Parks and Rec about where's the best place to put it. We've narrowed down some possibilities. Pam Vanderberg reached out into some of her community contacts to determine if Greenway Circle would be a good place for one. We got some information from them, from some of the residents there saying that they would love it, but that contradicted some information in John Gooding's public consultation process for redoing Greenway Circle. So I think we're going to pick a different area to place them. It will ultimately be up to Parks and Rec's discernment about where to plant them. But Lower Trent is looking at putting together one or perhaps two little forest kits for us.
Thank you. Anything to add, Councillor Butwell?
Nothing to add now.
Thank you. Questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. That brings us to a recommendation from the same committee, moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council directs staff to choose up to 2 suitable locations for planting up to 2 tiny forest kits for Lower Trent Conservation, and a liaison with the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee to facilitate an early June planting. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Brings us to the Housing and Homelessness Task Force April meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the meeting summary of April 10th, 2024 Housing and Homelessness Task Force meeting. Councillor Wheeldon, any updates?
Sure. I know that it probably reads like I was typing really quickly in the middle of other people's conversations, because that's exactly what happened. But this was a really positive meeting because Rebecca Carmen from the Housing Department was there to describe what exactly she does in her new role, how the county works on affordable housing. And so if you haven't had a chance to dig into those, or if you have any questions for me, please do let me know. But the big gist is, how can we partner with them to get more affordable housing? Give them enough land to put on a building that can have 75 to 80 units minimum, a building or buildings. And the thing that was really interesting to me was that the discussion about how they're not just building affordable housing, they're building communities that include the entire range of housing, because they don't want to create neighborhoods where you can know somebody's income level by their address. They want to ensure that, and also when they create an entire neighborhood of housing, they have some market rate units that help them to subsidize the subsidized units. So by creating that entire spectrum of housing, they're not getting as many affordable units as fast, but they are doing it more sustainably. And so that's very encouraging. Another thing that we discussed here was manufactured housing. We did discuss that there. Since then, Stephen Hailstrom, Matt Stearns, and I brought a delegation to County Council ECDEV Committee. This was last week. And so that is going to come back to the May 15th County Council meeting to hopefully be referred to staff for a report on whether or not they want to go ahead with a report on whether or not we want to go ahead with manufactured housing in Northumberland County. It's a $25,000 ask. Hopefully it should be a slam dunk. But that could be a real game changer in terms of how many units we could produce, because they're talking about a factory capable of producing 1,000 units a year. At a very conservative level, they think they've seen some that do up to 4 times that. So there's a lot of chance for development of housing quickly, which could also reduce the carrying costs of our land banking program if it can be developed quickly rather than having a multi-year timeline. You know, if they could put up 500 units in 6 months, that would be a very fast, easy return for us on land banking. So some good things happening there. Lots of irons in the fire. No concrete actions yet.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And that brings us to reports, minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. First is the Public Library Board, March 27th. Councilors Rowley and Wright sit on that board. The motion is moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon, that Council receive the Brighton Public Library Board, March 27th, 2024 meeting minutes as presented. Councilor Wright or Rowley, any comment? No? No? Any questions or comments from members of council? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And from the DBIA, it's moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon, that council receive the DBIA annual general meeting minutes, February 8th, 2024, as presented. Councilor Rowley, as our rep, any comments? You need to use your microphone, ma'am.
I don't have any comment.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And Lower Trent Conservation is moved by Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon, that council receive the Lower Trent Conservation Drinking Water Source Meeting minutes, November 4th, 2023, and the Board of Directors meeting minutes, November 14th, 2023, as presented. And we have different reps on these 2 different committees. Am I correct? We have Councilors Wheeldon and Wright for the Board of Directors, and no? You're both on both? All right. Then Councilors Wheeldon and Wright, any comments on the board meeting minutes? Go ahead, Councilor Wheeldon.
Lower Trent meetings typically don't have a lot for us to decide. It's a lot of reviewing financial reports, et cetera. We did appoint a few new people to the source protection group. And otherwise there was nothing big or controversial.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Councilor Wright.
I would just add to say that the conservation authorities are just continuing to struggle with the reduced funding that's been handed to them and the increased legislation and the changing legislation. So wherever we can support them, I think it's really important to do so.
Thank you for that. Anything from other members? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first is a resolution from Richmond Hill. It's moved by Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Butwell. That council receive or support resolution from Richmond Hill regarding extension of the deadline for listed non-designated heritage properties. Councillor Wright, this is your motion. Would you like to receive or support it?
Support, please.
And Councillor Botwell, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Any questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And a resolution from the municipality of St. Charles, moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council supports the resolution from the municipality of St. Charles to support Public Health Sudbury and District's resolution regarding household food insecurity. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And from Hastings County, a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive or support the resolution from Hastings County regarding sustainable infrastructure funding for small rural municipalities. Councillor Wright, this is your motion. Support. Councillor Wheeldon, you okay with that? Thank you. Is there any discussion from members of council? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And from the municipality of Huron Shores, a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council receive or support the resolution from the municipality of Huron Shores regarding urging the government to promptly resume assessment cycle. Councillor Fredis, receive or support? And Councillor Butwell, are you okay with that? Thank you. The motion reads that we are supporting it. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Yeah, I just want to take an opportunity to explain to folks that if this is not resumed, we're not actually paying a fair amount of property taxes. Some people's assessments would have changed over the last 8 years. And so that means that any inaccuracy that we have means that we don't have accurate taxation, and that this is not the municipality's fault. And so I know we received a presentation from MPAC last year, I think, describing this to us, but I think it needs to be said often and in public that the province not resuming this cycle means that some people are paying too much property tax and some people are paying too little, and that's not fair.
Indeed, and that by and large, although all property assessments will go up because everything has gone up over the last 8 years, the municipal tax rate would then go down because we do not take more money than we budget for. And that's where we set the tax rate for is the monies that we need to receive. So in theory, if your home assessment goes up on average based on everybody else's, you will pay the same property tax you're paying today, with the exception of what the municipality needs from a budget purpose. For budget purposes, it's only those houses or homes or properties that go up greater than the average that would end up paying more. But then there would be some that don't go up by the average and they would pay less. So quite right. Thank you. And frankly, it's just lazy politics at the end of the day to freeze this. It's an attempt to look popular when all you're doing is handcuffing certain people and creating inequity in a system that is already inequitable enough. Any further discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Nothing listed under FYI correspondence. That brings us to question period. Are there any questions from members of the gallery with anything that was on tonight's agenda? Sir, yep. Mr. McBride, please come up to the microphone, and although I know your name, you still need to tell us who you are. And Manager Hallam or Director Walsh, could you, oh, never mind, Councillor Fredis has it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Be careful, Councillor Fredis. You're going to get hired for something.
Yes, my name is Byron McBride. I am the president of Brighton Minor Hockey. And yes, we're always open to any sort of consultation. Anytime there's any questions about our organization, how we operate, how we do things, feel free to reach out anytime. I've read over the documents and I have some confusion with some of it from an organization perspective. One of them being, we've talked about historical ice rentals and who has priority on that. And at the same time, you've got Brighton Minor Hockey listed as a youth and sports. We're just, maybe, which one do we fall into? Because based on some of the stuff I have read, we're kind of in two spots. And that does make a difference when you read over the sections about who gets priority. And it says where it goes municipality, tournaments, then youth sports. I'm just maybe a little confused on that. If I could maybe get some clarification.
Probably a conversation you should have offline. And so I would encourage Manager Hallam to be in touch with you.
Okay.
Because we did pass the policy tonight, so it's in play. But I would encourage you to, and as always, if you don't feel that you're satisfied with what staff have to say, please reach out to any member of council, all of us or any of us, and we can try to circle back to you. And
so perhaps I just save my questions and we can chat at a later time.
I would encourage that rather than doing so at a council meeting where, we really, if you had a question on the actual policy or the writing of the policy, we could probably answer that, but this sounds more of a conversation you need to sit down
and I was unaware until last night that this was happening. So
Fair enough.
My apologies.
No, not at all. Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public with regard to anything on tonight's agenda? Thank you. We have no closed session this evening, which brings us to our confirmatory bylaws, moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on, what is today's date? May 6th, 2024. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that the May 6, 2024 council meeting adjourn at 7:38 p.m. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Drive safely home, everyone, and thanks for your participation.